Hello, thanks for watching. This is a presentation of our Capstone project for the Portland State University Computer Science program. We are Johnnie Clark, James Fotheringham, Sam Greenberg, David Hine, Haley Siebert, Alex Staley, that's me, Alyssa Vi, and Nelson Wong. And the Black Resilience Fund is a local nonprofit that acts as a connection between Portlanders of color who are in need and their neighbors who want to help. BRF collects donations and processes and fulfills applications for funds, goods, and services. And since they were founded in 2020, it's been a very human process with tons of volunteers collecting and updating information and organizing the aid award process. So we built a web app that helps streamline that process by collecting information from aid applicants and donors and allowing them to update their contact information in BRF's database. So let's dive right into it. I will first turn it over to Alyssa Vi, who will give us a short demo of the app.
Hello, so I'll go ahead and demo what we have. When a user who is part of Brown Hope or interested in applying for aid, they can have the opportunity to edit their account information. This will include sections like their name, their last name, their home address, a phone number if they changed it, an email address, their contact method, and payment method. And once that gets saved, it gets sent to the volunteers database. And as you can see here, we have John Doe with the updated information. Now that their information has been updated, they can apply for aid. And these have 3 sections, which are services, goods, and funds. The user will be able to choose which one they want to apply for. So let's take a look into services, and it'll have these checkboxes so that they can choose which ones they need. And also it includes text boxes to include more information about the service that they need. For example, for yard work, they can state that they need help with pruning. And then towards the end, they can specify when they are available. And that gets submitted. And the same goes for goods with the option of food boxes and funds. In the same manner, they can choose to offer aid to other users. And in here we have services and items. And then if they are a part of a business, they can specify that they are. And here are items. And that is it for our app.
Thanks, Alyssa. Next, we will hear from Johnnie Clark, who will talk about our users and target audience.
All right, I'll be going over who our users will be and our assumptions. So our target audience are members of the Black community in the Portland area who may be in need and are seeking donations such as items, financial support, and things like that, as well as people who may be or may not be part of the Black community, but are looking to donate and offer help to those who need it. So we're making several assumptions. The biggest one being that all our users have and can access a valid email address. We are also assuming that both recipients and donors live in the Portland area and that not all our users will have access to a specific device or operating system. To put that a little differently, we are not assuming that users will be using a specific type of device, such as iPhone or Android. We want to make sure that the app was mobile and cross-platform friendly, which is why we went with the progressive web app. And lastly, we are assuming that not everyone is very tech literate. So we tried keeping things very simple, like you saw in the demo, so that it was a very user-friendly experience for people of all ages and technology knowledge ranges.
Hello, my name is Siebert, and I'm going to talk through a little bit some of the features that we've implemented as a part of this project. The three primary features that we implemented as a part of this Capstone project included applying for aid, staying up to date, and giving back to the community. Applying for aid allows for users to be able to enter, depending on the type of aid they need, both what they need and any additional information that is needed. In Airtable, what this looks like is the information gets bundled up and then passed to the back end, which then gets entered into an individual table that we have created into Airtable that ties together with user information. Another feature that we implemented as a part of this was the ability to keep information up to date. The primary way that we decided to tackle this was allowing for users to edit their own contact information as needed. The users can alter their information in the form responses table in Airtable by using our UI. It matches by username and it disallows invalid entries with specialized error codes, and it also allows for pattern matching on phone numbers, so that way it accepts a wide variety of ways that someone may try to enter their phone number. And for giving back to the community, I'm going to pass it off to Sam.
Thank you, Haley. Hi, I'm Sam Greenberg. Just as it's important for our app to connect people in need with BRF, it's also important to connect BRF with people who would like to offer aid to the community in the form of goods or services. Our app facilitates this process by allowing users to submit a form where they can offer their donations. We have a form for services where they can offer to donate things like yard work, therapy, or legal advice, as well as another form for items where they can donate household items, food, clothing, up to computers and bikes. On both forms, we also include an option for them to fill out an other, where they can outline other goods or services that they would like to donate to the community through BRF. And we also request their contact information, so that after review, a BRF representative can get in touch about their donation. Both of these forms go to the different pages in Airtable which BRF has set up to handle these donation requests. There, the representatives can review them and get in touch with people if they feel like the donation will be a good fit. Now here's Nelson to talk about our future work. Thank you.
Hey, I'm Nelson, and I'll be talking about the future work to be done to make this app even better. The first thing is to make it into a progressive web app. We had originally planned to make it one because it will allow users to just install the app on their home screen instead of going to the web browser directly to access the application. Also, PWAs allow you to download some metadata as well, so that, for example, you can view what items you have requested or services you have requested without internet. Second, having the ability for users to message BRF volunteers directly inside the application would be extremely useful to facilitate communication. It'd be a lot more convenient than emailing or text message or using the text message. Third, currently when people donate items, they are only able to describe their donations with text. So it would be nice for them to add images so that people who are looking for offered donations can actually see what the item looks like. Fourth, in our current version, people who request donations or services won't be able to view the list of items that are already being offered by donors. So it would be nice to add that. Fifth, it would also be nice to allow users to view the requests and also allow BRF volunteers to provide updates to their requests. 6. It would be nice for BRF admins to have something like an admin portal so that they can view all the information such as requests, donations, and other good stuff in a nice, appealing UI instead of a fancy Excel sheet, which is Airtable. 7. It would be nice to assign each request and service donation with an ID so that they can easily be tracked and managed. 8. And finally, the last item is a feature to confirm the identity for people who are requesting aid by having a photo ID uploaded. And that's it. Thank you.
Hey, my name is James Fotheringham. I'm going to talk about the architecture of our app for a little bit. So this is the basic flow diagram for how our application works. So we have users accessing the client through their web browser or through their phone. And then that basically anything they do through that is going to hit our server, which we have Dockerized on a cloud virtual machine. So basically it's running on a virtual machine, and then it's hitting Airtable, which is kind of this, it's like an API that lets you use a database that basically Brown Hope already had set up. And that's how they've been using all of the applications and donations for their aid so far. So they wanted us to keep using that. And so we integrated our application with Airtable, and then via Airtable, it hits the database and it stores any information that they save into user info, aid application, and donations tables. And then that information can then be retrieved as well when a user is trying to access it. And just to talk about some of the tools we used. So on the front end, on the front end and the back end, we use TypeScript as our language of choice. And then on the front end, we had React.js to sort of set up the components. And then we use Material UI, which is just kind of a library that lets you build out kind of nice looking components. And then we have Jest, which is a testing platform for writing unit tests. And then on the back end, we use Node and Express as our server. And then we used Passport, which allows you to do user authentication. And then we have Swagger to set up to help with endpoints. And we used Docker to kind of containerize our application. And we also use Jest for setting up tests. And hand it over to David Hine now.
Hello, David here. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we got here with our development process. First quarter, we began by getting assigned teams and selecting our project. Everyone on the present team was very enthusiastic about the BRF application, so we eventually got that, and everyone's very excited for that. And then we met the sponsor and started to feel out their needs and did some requirements gathering and reviewed their website that they have now, and created some mock-ups for what we thought the application should look like and got feedback from the sponsor. And after that, we started to dig into some of the technologies that James just mentioned, and had some passionate debates about what technology to use, and learned a lot at that step in the process. And from all of that, we came up with a plan that we had the sponsor sign off on, and then began framing out stories and epics for features we were going to implement in clusters. And that brought us to the next quarter, where we started to implement these stories. And a big part of our development process was that in our early days, our stories were much larger, and they were subsequently refined and windowed down into more consumable, easy to implement pieces of code. And we did all this following the agile development process on 2-week sprints. What we would do at the beginning is we would have a planning meeting and decide who was going to do what, and that work would hopefully be completed within the 2-week span. And we were also, throughout all of this, meeting with the sponsor and demoing features that we had implemented. The team was in touch on Slack at all points and also over Zoom. And the sponsor was gracious enough to add us to their Slack, so we interacted there as well. We used Jira to track stories, epics, and sprint goals, and GitHub for source control. So we had a PR process where when you made a PR, you would ping the Slack channel and someone would review your code, give you feedback if needed, and then you could execute your pull requests if all was well. So just to review real quick, our basic workflow was you get a ticket, you clarify on Slack and Zoom, you do your development, and a lot of times development involves some pair programming, linking up the front and back end. As Alex, I believe, will elaborate on a little more later. We did have a front and back end team, but there was a lot of pairing involved in that. And after development, PR, code review, and then demo to the sponsor. And that does it for me. I'm going to hand it off to Alex.
Thanks, David. Yeah, to continue the discussion of the development process, I want to talk a bit about the dev team and how we all contributed to the final product. So officially, we split into a front and a back end team with the personnel you see here, but each of us contributed in a special way, so I want to recognize some of those contributions while we're here. I was the team lead, which means I did my best to ensure everyone on the team was in a position to succeed, to keep us on schedule and on the same page, and to adhere to design principles and agile methodologies. On the front end team, Alyssa was our styling guru, making sure the pages all look like they belong to the same well-designed app. David wrangled our deployment process, getting the app containerized and eventually deployed to a virtual machine on the Google Cloud platform. Johnnie gets the most improved dev award for joining the team with almost no front-end dev experience and eventually becoming one of the most reliable contributors. Nelson's familiarity with React development helped us make much more informed decisions about tools and best practices. On the back end, Haley dug into the nuances of Airtable and made sure we were able to effectively use it for our data layer in the way the client needed us to. James was our get it done guy. We never went long without seeing a valuable contribution come from his branch. And Sam was our utility infielder. I could always count on him to successfully attack any task and do it with good humor. And of course, this just scratches the surface of all of the work these people did to make the project succeed. So all in all, really great team of people that I feel lucky to have gotten the chance to work with. Of course, there were surprises along the way. One worth mentioning is that we had to kind of redefine the main functions of the app midway through winter term, as it became clear that we weren't meant to automate BRF's backend application processing workflow, which was something we had considered in most of our design discussions up to that point. And I think now that if we had realized that sooner, we would have been able to come up with a more effective design for the application processing logic that we were automating. Another surprise was when we hit a roadblock over cloud hosting and spent a couple of weeks at an impasse over whose credit card we should use to open up a GCP cloud hosting account. And we ended up developing locally and deploying to Docker containers before moving to the cloud, making later ownership transfer and cloud deployment easier. Probably the biggest surprise was the personnel and procedure shakeup that BRF itself was going through during the last couple of months. We got to keep our main point of contact, but some fundamental questions like what info should the funding application be collecting remain tentative well into development. And we dealt with this by keeping communication channels open and just staying ready to have our assumptions challenged. We do have some feedback from our sponsors to share. Tracy Mihok, the data lead at BRF and our main point of contact, says she is very impressed with the dedication and enthusiasm of this team supporting Brown Hope and the Black Resilience Fund with this effort. The team has been very accommodating and communicative regarding project details, appropriately concerned with the experience of different types of users, makes an effort to reach out and ask for information needed, and is willing to discuss alternatives and explain consequences of different choices. In retrospect, it might have been helpful at the end of each sprint demo to review priorities for work toward the following demo, as this would also let us know what relevant information we should gather and provide. I would have liked to hear more about plans for sprint 3 and 4 demos, and it would also be helpful to hear more frequent small updates on progress in between demos. All in all, grateful for the time, effort, and care that this team has put into their work. As our organization does not have an established tech or developer team, this is something we would not have been able to create without the PSU Capstone students. So much appreciated feedback there from Tracy. And just to talk about some of the more valuable things that we learned during this process, first and foremost, being communication is key, especially in a fully remote working situation. As Tracy mentioned, it is easy for the client to lose track of the development process if there isn't constant communication back and forth. And if a question never gets asked, it probably won't get answered. And it's easy to feel like you're asking too many questions when you're actually not asking enough. By a similar token, everything should be written down, recorded, otherwise kept track of. It is super easy to forget what was decided at yesterday's meeting if no one took down the minutes. Effective use of version control was an extremely valuable takeaway from this product. Having to square your work away with the work of 7 other developers requires a lot of time and effort beyond just writing code. A lot of attention to detail, and the practice we all got with tools like Git and GitHub, and with procedures like code review and keeping your local environment consistent with the shared remote one was huge. This project was also a great chance to get our agile feet wet and learn what it means to size tasks, how to manage our expectations, and how to quantify the work that can be done within a sprint. So lastly, I want to thank the folks at BRF, specifically Tracy Mihok, who was the driving force behind this app being considered as a capstone project, Zach Young, who provided a valuable perspective into BRF's existing tech stack, and India Hawley, who helped us understand what the applicant intake process looks like and what information we should be focused on. It was great working with all of you, and thank you so much for everything you do. Thanks for watching.